Hi, I'm Judi Friedman, chairperson of PACE, People's Action for Clean Energy. We're a statewide organization that is very interested in safe, renewable energy. And we are having a program called Solutions to an Inconvenient Truth. And most of you have probably heard about Al Gore's film, An Inconvenient Truth. It's about global warming and what we can do. There are solutions. That's the good news. And PACE is an organization we hope you will join. We hope you will think about supporting. We have a website, and we hope you look at that. We support clean, renewable energy, conservation, energy efficiency, and we are very, very concerned about nuclear energy and nuclear weapons. We're concerned about fossil fuels. We're concerned about Connecticut's air and water. And today I have with me a very, very, very interesting guest whom I'm very proud to bring to this audience. His name is Bob Chu, and I have great admiration for him because he's not only a fine businessman, a skilled workman, but he's wonderful with people, and the motivations behind his business are very, very positive, very constructive, very admirable. Bob, can you tell us what your business is?
Well, thank you, Judy. That's quite an introduction. Solar Wrights is a renewable energy company.
Now that's Solar Wrights.
Solar Wrights.
Not R-I-G-H-T. Nope. It's like the Wainwright ship.
Shipwrights, house rights, W-R-I-G-H-T-S.
And you did work on boats. So
I was a boat builder. My father was a boat builder, and I left Mystic Seaport in 1977 to start my solar business. So,
and you're in the solar business.
That's right.
What kinds of solar? And now there are different kinds of solar energy. There's photovoltaic solar electricity. There's passive solar. There's solar hot water, solar thermal, all sorts of different. So tell us exactly what you do.
I would say right now in Connecticut, the majority of what we're doing are photovoltaics or solar electric systems that generate clean electricity, although we're doing more and more of the solar hot water systems. And that's really what we did back in the 70s, was a lot of the solar hot water systems that preheat the domestic hot water for showers and so forth.
What happened to the solar hot water situation in the 70s? Because that was a big thing.
Yeah, actually it was a very fast-growing industry in the late 70s, early 80s, and unfortunately, without notice to the industry, in 1986, President Reagan canceled the 40% federal tax credits.
Wow.
And that basically put most of the companies out of business.
And who put panels on the White House and then took them off? Was that Mr. Reagan also?
President Carter put them on, and President Reagan took them off, and they're at Union College in Maine right now.
Oh, well, good. They're not dead. That's good.
They're not dead. So
you're working also with photovoltaics. Now, is that an expensive system for a homeowner to install?
Without incentives, it would be a pretty expensive system. But the good news in Connecticut Clean Energy Fund has, in my opinion, the best program in the Northeast.
Wow.
So they have very generous incentives. Homeowners can get up to $46,500 in a grant from the Connecticut Clean Energy Fund to offset some of the upfront cost of these systems. The advantage of photovoltaic systems is really there's no moving parts, and most of the manufacturers warranty the product for 25 years. So it is a long-term purchase in that you're buying an electric generating appliance that will last for 25 years or longer.
And I'll bet the price of electricity is going to go up, up, up.
Every time our customers get a notice from their utility companies, our phone rings. So you hate to benefit as a businessman from other people's bad news, but again, I think we've all benefited from very inexpensive energy in this country for years. I lived in England for a while, and again, they didn't drive big cars and lived in smaller houses and everything. So I think we're starting to feel some of that pinch. I just filled up my Prius on the way here, and it took $27 to fill up my Prius. So I can't imagine what these SUVs are going through.
Yes, and how many miles per gallon does your Prius get?
It depends on my driving habits. I can get up to 56 and as low as 46. So it has a lot to do with my behavior.
That's the gas hybrid Toyota car, which is a wonderful car.
I love it.
What is the behavior that you need to use to drive your Prius to get the best mileage? Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, keeping within the speed limits, obviously, and
good idea.
Using coasting down the hills whenever possible, those kind of things.
Because when you coast, it generates energy.
It generates electricity.
It's not a car you plug in. It generates its own energy.
Correct, yep.
Yeah, it's a wonderful car.
It's a wonderful car, and I carry my wind turbine sample around and little giant ladder, so for a small car it's surprisingly.
So you're also into wind energy.
Yeah, we have a division of Solar Wrights called Wind Wrights, and we do residential and commercial scale wind turbines.
Wonderful.
And we were real happy. Last week we received a variance for our first SkyStream wind turbine installation in Watertown, Connecticut.
SkyStream is the name of the type of turbine?
It's a model made by Southwest Wind Power, and it's a residential sized wind turbine. And it took us 3 meetings with the variance department, with the board.
With the zoning?
With the zoning board to get the variance. So we were thrilled. So
well, you're doing something else that I think is very, very important. As the price of oil goes up, we are going to have more and more problem obtaining food from far away. We're going to be more and more dependent on our own farmland. And Connecticut is losing its farmland rapidly, as are the other New England states. So if we can help farmers keep their farmland, we would be doing a wonderful thing. And I just heard about a new project that you're involved in that will help farmers keep their farmland and also benefit energy.
It will make it easier for them to stay in business, because the cost of energy for a typical milking farm might be $2,000 a month in electric bills.
Wow.
So they also have to wash down all the milking stations every day with 180-degree water.
Wow.
So we were fortunate. We were able to meet the deadline last Friday, and we put in 3 USDA grant applications for 50 kW wind turbines, which will do pretty much 100% of the electricity for these 3 dairy farms that we're working with.
So you'll have the dairy farm and you have the wind turbine, you help to save the farm, you help save the farmer money. Probably affects the price of milk if people would go into wind as an energy source.
No question, and there is a big movement toward buying food locally. I think you're seeing a big movement that direction, and I think some of the stuff that's happened with the pet food fiasco in China, I think is getting people to start to think about where their food's coming from.
That is a big solution to the global warming issue, is food. What we eat, where it's grown or harvested or raised, that's very important. So if we can support our local farmers, we are really helping the farmer, the land. We're reducing pollution. We probably reduce prices and help our environment tremendously also.
It's really a win-win to help farmers and also be able to help them reduce their environmental footprint. So, and the nice thing with farms is usually they're on top of hills, and getting sunshine is not a problem.
And it's important that people realize that not everybody can use wind power. You have to have a good site.
You definitely have to have a good site. A lot of areas in Connecticut are marginal. There are some good areas. We're hoping to put a wind turbine at Pine Point School in Stonington, Connecticut, which is close to the shore. And we just finished a 72.6 kW photovoltaic installation that's doing between half and a third of the electricity for the school.
I am so impressed with Pine Point School. I wish every school in Connecticut could adopt a program like Pine Point School with the values, the morality, that one of their quotes is making a constructive difference in the world. That's what they want to teach their students. And they're actually doing a lot with the school to show their contribution to making a better environment. Can you tell us what Pine Point School, this is in Stonington,
right? It's in Stonington, Connecticut, and we covered 3 of their roofs with photovoltaic panels, 330 220 watt modules. And now that the net metering cap has been raised to 0.5 megawatt, we're going to attack the rest of their problem. And in addition to bringing in a wind turbine, which we're hoping will do 100% between the photovoltaics and the wind, we're hoping that will do 100% of their electricity from green sources, but we're also looking at other things. They have an opportunity for passive solar heating in their gymnasium building. In their new addition, we'll encourage them to look at geothermal for other sources of heat, in addition to doing all the easy things, which is changing light bulbs and upgrading appliances and computers to Energy Star rated appliances.
Of course, that's the first thing to do before you invest in geothermal or wind or small hydro or solar.
Right.
It's important to lower your demand.
Right.
What has the school done specifically to lower their energy demand?
Motion sensors, changing lights to compact
Motion
fluorescents.
sensors. So when you come into a room or leave a room, the lights shut off?
Yes, correct.
And the heat also, or the lights?
They're not at that point yet.
But lights.
They do have 7 programmable thermostats that have been put in. There needs to be additional insulation. And you're right, Judy. We're really the last people you should call. Changing the light bulbs.
Wow, what a businessman you are.
No, well, it's a lot more cost effective. It takes energy to make solar equipment and everything else. Changing light bulbs.
Okay, here's an example of what you're talking about.
Sure.
We're talking about changing light bulb. This is a compact fluorescent light as opposed to an incandescent light.
Right.
It lasts up to 10,000 hours, 10 times longer than a standard bulb. So it uses less energy and lasts longer. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, and that's just one of the many examples of, there's only really 4 ways we're going to get away from this addiction to imported oil, and I know
it is. That's an addiction.
We were talking earlier about how I got into this business, and your passion is to provide clean energy options, so we don't have to rely on nuclear and fossil fuels. And back when I was in college, I was studying environmental science. That's my major, and we were facing an energy policy that had an energy nuclear power plant put on virtually every street corner.
Oh.
Seabrook was being proposed in New Hampshire at a very poor location, I thought. And that's how I got involved in this whole industry, is really looking at options, other than nuclear and oil. And, back when I started, our country was importing at the 73-74 Arab oil embargo. When I got out of school, we were importing 28% of our country's oil. And depending on who I talk to, it's about 63% of our country's oil currently is being imported. And where we are sitting on less than 3% of the known oil reserves, there's a problem there. And
it's also a problem. There's another problem. It's not only the economics, but it's also the health.
No question.
The asthma rates in this, we've talked about this in the program before, the asthma rates in this state are frightening. Yeah. The cancer rates are frightening, and it has to do with our energy policy.
Right.
Now, I'm very interested. Here's a gentleman who went into a business because he was disturbed about how things were and wanted to make it right, and I really commend you for that. I think it's really wonderful.
Thank you.
Bob is very eloquent about nuclear power. And Bob, where are the nuclear power plants in Connecticut?
We have Millstone. I think the ones that I was familiar with at the time I was in college were Vermont Yankee in Vernon, Vermont. And interesting, when I visited the plant and everything else, and they said, don't worry about the nuclear waste problem. By the time it's these systems have a 20-year lifespan, and when it's time to decommission these plants, we'll have figured out how to safely take care of the waste. And again, back then, that was one of my main concerns.
The waste.
The waste. I'm also
nuclear waste.
Nuclear waste.
They have no idea what to do with it.
No, and also I'm a fisherman, so I know the impact of cooling water has on marine ecology.
That's what a lot of people don't realize. They don't realize that the plant is putting out effluent. Right. Into the water and also into the air.
Sure.
And as a fisherman, what do you think? I mean, there are chemicals, there are radioactive isotopes. What do you think the effect on marine life is?
Well, I think there's obviously the health issues that you just talked about. But again, from a fisheries standpoint, I know I live right near Brayton Power Plant, which is the largest fossil fuel power plant in New England. And when we were young growing up in that, there was a big fishery. You could get flounders and striped bass and all these local fish. And today, Mount Hope Bay is pretty deserted from the fish that I remember catching when I was growing up. And a lot has to do with the cooling water, the amount of water that comes in to cool the plants. And so that's had a big impact. But I think the biggest concern that I have now with nuclear power plants is really I don't think we've addressed the terrorism issue. I think we're still very vulnerable if people did want to look at attacking a nuclear power plant.
So instead of moaning and groaning and complaining, you're out there making a difference. And this is the kind of building that Bob does, of course, commercial work, but this would be an example of a residential work. Here's the photovoltaic cells that you would put on a house, and or it can be not on the roof. It can be ground mounted also, correct?
We do a lot of pole mounted systems. We do a lot of ground mount systems. But if we do have an unshaded roof in a generally southerly direction, that's going to be a better value. We don't have to worry about concrete and other materials. It's a less expensive installation. The other thing that's a real advantage of covering the south roof with modules is there's a couple of inches of airspace. And in my home office, I have an old 100-year-old home, and I have 20 200-watt modules, and it does 100% of my electricity.
Wow.
So for the next 25 years or so, I just won't pay an electric bill, which my wife
Now
likes.
this is very important that people understand. What we're talking about is grid-connected electricity. It's not a standalone system. It's connected to CLNP or UI.
Yes.
And the power, when you produce more power, it goes to the utility. When you need power, it comes from the utility. And most people, once they get a system like this up, don't even have to think about it.
That's
right?
It's exactly.
Is there any repair or maintenance?
And very, very little. The inverters probably are going to last 15 years. The modules.
What's an inverter?
The inverter takes the DC power that the photovoltaic modules.
Okay, the sun coming in creates DC power.
DC power, and the inverter converts that to the AC current that your house uses. Now, today's a really good example. It was a nice sunny day. My wife and I were both at work. All day long, we're selling at full retail rates that surplus electricity.
So that the electric company is buying back power from you that you're producing. You're like a little power plant.
A mini power
generator.
Plant. Yep. And Connecticut is a net metered state, which requires the utility companies to buy back any surplus electricity at full retail rates, which is not every state has that. So
I'm pretty proud of lots of things Connecticut is doing. The buying back the electricity at the retail rate, the Connecticut Clean Energy Fund, which does the rebate system. You have to use an eligible installer, and Bob Chu Solar Wrights is one of those installers.
Right.
Another option we have in Connecticut now that I urge everyone to sign up for, no matter what else you do, is the green energy option.
Yep.
That is, all you do is through CLNP or UI, you sign up for Sterling Planet or Community Energy, and you pay just a little more, maybe $5 a month, something like that, and you are then buying clean energy for this state. And if everyone did that, it would make a tremendous difference in our state in the demand for clean energy. And I mean clean, squeaky clean.
No question. Really, if you think about it as a vote, when you sign up for clean energy programs, it's really you're casting a vote saying you don't want your electricity to come from dirty sources. And you were mentioning earlier about asthma. I've never smoked a cigarette in my life, and I have asthma. And
so unfair.
Yeah, I mean, and it just seems like, why should I have asthma? But again, some days the air just isn't really good, and I need to use an inhaler, and it just seems. You go into schools. When I was in elementary school, you never saw an inhaler.
No.
You go into the schools today, and you ask kids for an inhaler, and half the kids raise their hand and they have an inhaler. So, again, I think back when I was younger, the smoke coming out of smokestacks were dirtier, and it was more evident what was happening. I think nowadays you're seeing the emissions much cleaner, but it doesn't mean that they're any healthier.
Yes. It is important to note with these compact fluorescent bulbs, they do contain a small amount of mercury.
Yes.
So it's very important that they go in household hazardous waste.
Yep.
However, if we don't use these bulbs and use the regular incandescent bulbs, the plants also, the big power plants, emit more mercury. So we're better off using these lights and disposing of them properly.
Again, there's no energy that doesn't have an impact. What we're looking at is those sources that have the least amount of impact. The other thing, as we were talking about Pine Point School or our many customers throughout Connecticut, is that energy dollar now stays and gets recirculated throughout the Connecticut economy. Where
very good point.
I don't think a lot of people really think about the impact of that. Now, we talked about the farmers, and not only are we keeping typical farmers paying a couple of $1,000s a month for electricity, that money's now staying in his pocket. He can go out and buy new equipment or hire new people. So I'm as a businessman, I'm really very aware and encouraged about what Connecticut has been doing and what they're continuing to do to promote not just solar, but all renewables.
Well, some of these other energy producing technologies also do not demand the jobs. The solar industry is very good for jobs, is it not?
Yeah, per megawatt of production capacity, solar hires the most people, requires the most labor, local labor. And we just had a large-scale wind turbine put in Rhode Island, and an out-of-state crew comes in. A week later, they leave. And with solar, right now there's 18 installers on the Connecticut Clean Energy Fund list, and I know we just hired 3 new people last week alone. So it is a very
you're growing.
I think
hear that, a business in Connecticut that's growing. Yay!
Yeah, so we're excited about that. But again, so I think there's extra benefits in addition to just the clean energy. It's not only when we start growing and other companies like ours grow, it's not just employees, but now I need a couple of new trucks, and we've just brought a new phone system in. So that money is getting recirculated. And so I think it's real important what Connecticut Clean Energy Fund is doing. And we're writing a story for September for Home Power magazine.
Oh, wonderful.
And we're rating all the...
That's a very good magazine. If people are interested in energy, Home Power is a very good magazine. Been around for a long time, and it's very, very sensible, practical, and interesting.
Sure is. And so we were able to rate all the New England states, and Connecticut gets the highest rating. So
wow!
5 stars. So we were very happy
5 stars for what?
For their photovoltaic program. We really
wonderful.
We think that Connecticut's program is the model that other states should look at.
Isn't that wonderful? Yes. California, of course, has a good program, doesn't it?
Very, very good program.
People don't realize how much sun there actually is in Connecticut. They don't think about it, but in the winter, of course, the snow reflects the sun and it increases it.
Well, there's really 3 factors that determine if a state's a good solar state. Obviously, you have to have sunlight, you have to have high energy costs, and you have to have favorable legislation and incentives. And Connecticut has all 3 of those.
Yeah, does it ever?
It sure does. You do have high energy costs, and
right.
We do have plenty of sunshine. We all hear about Germany being so much ahead of us in the development of solar energy, but we have much better solar in Connecticut than we do in Germany.
That's very amazing, and Germany has really moved ahead. Also, one of the things that I'm hoping the Clean Energy Fund will also do a rebate system for is solar hot water.
Right.
Can you talk about, this is a different, there's solar electricity, there's passive solar, there's solar thermal space heating, and then there's domestic hot water. When you go on the shower, turn on the shower, then you can use solar hot water. Can you tell us about that?
Well, sure. A typical solar hot water system today would have either 2 flat plate collectors.
Well, that's like this
just
right
like you have on your house here, with maybe an 80-gallon storage tank. So when
and the storage tank's in the basement?
In the basement, and it feeds hot water to your existing water heater. So it's a preheat system, and we would say on average it probably is going to do 70% of your domestic hot water needs. Now, as far
How about the winter?
Even in the winter, sure. Depending on tilt angle and everything else, yeah.
It would preheat the water coming from the ground so that the incremental cost wouldn't be as great.
From May to September, we're probably going to do high 90s. And then November and December are our worst solar months, so we're not going to do as well. We might do 40%. But it depends on lifestyle. If people learn to look at the weather and use hot water during times when they know the sun's out. Obviously today's a good day. All of our customers have their solar tanks are all charged up with hot water. And if it's 3 days of clouds, you always need a backup system with solar. The sun's not always out, but another thing that you didn't mention is with photovoltaics is that it produces a special kind of electricity, and that's electricity that is being produced always during these periods of peak power.
Good point.
And on August 2nd, I don't know if many people realize it, but we broke all records in New England for the highest amount of electricity ever used.
It was hot.
Yeah, it was hot.
And records broke, and things shut down. It was scary, dangerous.
We were so
for
close
older people.
We were so close to a power outage. They basically said if one power generator went offline, we would have had a blackout throughout New England. It was that close. So as demand is continuing to increase. I mean, you go to a Home Depot on a Saturday on a hot summer day and just look at the air conditioners and dehumidifiers going out the door, and we haven't brought any new generators, any new power plants online in a while, and a lot of those are using natural gas, and we don't have a surplus of natural gas. That's going to be in short supply, especially in the winter, times when we really need it.
So the summer, it's very interesting, the demand for electricity is highest in the summer.
Right.
And that's when the sun is stronger. What a marriage.
It is.
Just beautiful.
And those cold winter days are when the wind turbines are producing them. So
Ah.
the system,
The balance.
the sun and wind, perfect balance is for the electric companies, 100 hours of peak demand that they have to find ways to generate electricity. And, for those 100 hours, a lot of times they have to put idled boilers, get those up to temperature and get those working, and there's a lot of pollution and waste associated with getting these up, to be producing during these periods of short duration from noon to 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And
what people don't also realize is that when you're transmitting energy from a huge centralized place,
Sure.
you waste some of the energy. What's great about these systems is that they're decentralized, and you're producing energy right where you're using it. And that's a beautiful marriage.
It sure is. So going back to the hot water, I never quite finished, but whether we use evacuated tube collectors or flat plate collectors, it's a more efficient system than photovoltaics. We're really hoping that Connecticut Clean Energy Fund will start providing some incentives for hot water systems.
About how much would it cost for a person to put, let's say, for a family of 4, to have hot water panels on their roof? How much roughly?
Ballpark, maybe $10,000 before incentives, and then there's $2,000 federal tax credits. We're hoping to see some movement, at the national level. But I was proud.
And the payback probably would be what, 4 or 5 years? Would you say?
I think until probably a little longer than that.
Mm-hmm.
Again,
of course, that depends on the rising price of energy.
Sure, it sure does. And the other thing is, the solar hot water systems. I put my first system in 1977. These last a long, long time if they're properly maintained.
Well, I want to thank you so much
Great.
for coming and all the good work you're doing.
Well,
and I know you were working in Rhode Island, and then their whole financial structure changed, and so we're very glad you're in Connecticut. You're doing a great job.
PACE is a wonderful grassroots organization, so thanks for all your good work.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Judy. Thanks.